I have a son, Mark, and a stepson, Luke, both around the same age. AITA for doing more activities with my stepson and not with my son. I 38M have a son and a stepson who are both similarly aged. My son Mark 15M and stepson Luke 14M. Mark was defiantly a mama's boy, and unfortunately his mom/my wife died when he was 8. It's been a huge struggle raising him, especially since he has completely different interests to me, which is completely fine, but makes things difficult. Someone who has been a great figure in his life is my sister/his Aunt May, as she is really into the same interests as Mark and they have a great time whenever she babysits. A few years ago, I met my girlfriend Laura 37F, who was a single mom since Luke's dad was never in the picture. Me and Luke actually really hit it off since Laura introduced me to him. He never really had any male role models, since Laura only had sisters, and her dad died when she was a teenager. He's also into a lot of the same stuff I'm into, which is where the conflict started to arise. I've tried a couple of times to take Mark to football matches, but he just doesn't have any interest in it. So May looked after Mark when I'd go to football games a couple of times a year. However, Luke was incredibly excited to go to games with me, as he's never been before but is a big fan. Recently, May spoke to me in private and said that Mark was incredibly jealous of Luke spending time with me alone, and asked that I not go to a Formula One event with him next weekend. I asked Mark if he wanted to go, but had no interest in it. They both are really good friends, but Mark felt like I loved Luke more than him, which admittedly broke my heart. Even though he doesn't go to football with me, I still make sure to take him to things that he'd enjoy, such as West End shows and concerts of his favorite singers. I said to May that although I understand and try to speak to Mark, it would be incredibly unfair to Luke to stop taking him out and to not take him out next week when he's been excited for it for so long. May said that I needed to put my own son first and that I was damaging my relationship with him. Those words have kind of cut deep, and I was wondering, AITA? Relevant comments. OP clarifies. Just to clarify, I didn't mean mama's boy in a bad way at all. It was a term my wife used to use for him, considering how close they were, and also to highlight that it was a huge blow for him when she died. When he was younger, he was kind of shameless about his mom being the favorite parent in a really cute way. Commenter. Info. Do you offer to take him to West End shows, etc.? Or does he have to ask? Do you show enthusiasm for his interests, or are you just going along? OP. Both, if that makes sense. I'll often ask if he wants to go do something on a weekend/bank holiday, and he picks a show he'd like. And if there's something new or that he really wants to go to, he'll ask me. I try to show enthusiasm as much as I can, but I can't match his energy. For example, the last thing we went to together was a Taylor Swift show, and I don't think I could even nearly match the enthusiasm of Mark, May, and the rest of the crowd. I do like seeing how happy it makes him, though. OP is voted YTA. Update post, June 30th, 2024. First of all, I want to thank everyone who gave comments. I felt some of the comments and messages I received were judgmental and hurtful, but accepted that most people seemed to think I was the asshole in the situation. So rather than defend myself, my priority was to make things right with my son Mark. I spoke to him and opened up by telling him how much I loved him and how I wouldn't change anything about him, and that he inherited all of the qualities I loved so much about his mother. He seemed pretty confused when I said that and said he really appreciated it, but asked where it was coming from. I told him that I heard that he was getting jealous about the time I was spending with Luke one-on-one, and that I'd hate for him to think or feel that I was abandoning him by spending time with Luke. He then had a bit of an embarrassed look on his face and reassured me that he didn't feel abandoned or jealous of Luke. I then mentioned how May said otherwise, and he then visibly cringed. He then told me that he was jealous, but of me rather than Luke. That he thought Luke was incredibly nice to him when they first met, and was really excited to have a friend like him, since most of his friends through his school and clubs are girls. That he'd like to spend more time hanging out, just the two of them, but he's much interested in hanging out with me rather than him. I instantly felt relief about the situation and asked if he spoke to Luke about hanging out more, and he said that he hasn't, as he didn't know what to ask to do or to come across as weird. I asked what they both had in common, and he said they liked similar video games, music, and film/TV. So I offered to buy them both tickets to any upcoming film they'd both want to see, and that if there are any upcoming concerts or gigs that they want to go to, that I'd buy them tickets if that's something they'd like. Mark was really happy at that suggestion, as well as Luke and Laura. Especially Laura, because Luke doesn't really have many friends, and she was really worried about how he would get on if there was any blending of families. So turns out they were both wanting to be better friends with each other, but neither one wanted to express it out of fear of rejection from the other. OP comment. Have to admit that when I saw the comments and messages in the original that I was really scared I fucked up big time, but over the moon that everything worked out.